What kind of a cartoon is this going to be, anyway?
Well, you see, I play the lead in the picture, and my name is Sammy Squirrel, and the story is all about me and my cute little furry friends in the forest.
Oh,
Reddy
brother, not
Fox and
that,
Billy
not
Beaver
that.
and Wallace Woodchuck and Buster Badger and Horace Hedgehog and Scott Skunk and Barney Bear and Tommy Monkey and Dorothy Duck.
You wouldn't have liked the story anyway.
We don't think so either. That's why we've gathered some of the wildest, funniest, sexiest cartoons ever made. These are definitely not for the tiny tots. Nope, these are cartoons for big kids. Hello, I'm Leonard Maltin, and I love cartoons. I always have, but I guess the difference between me and a lot of other people is that I didn't stop loving them when I grew up. I feel badly for people who did, who succumbed to the peer pressure that made them feel as if it was childish to still watch and enjoy animated cartoons. That's really foolish. You know, the great cartoons of the 30s and 40s were never made for kids in the first place. They weren't made for television either. They were part of the movie-going experience before TV took over, when most Americans used to go to the movies at least once a week. These cartoons were meant to be shown along with the newsreel and the feature film, to adults as well as kids.
The next scene is quite gruesome, so for the benefit of the children in the audience, we will split the screen. The left side for grown-ups, the right for the children. For the grown-ups, a hideous Gila monster. For the children, a recitation.
Mary had a little lamb. Its fleece was white as snow. And everywhere that Mary went, the lamb was sure to go.
And that's why the cartoons of that era, especially the ones made by Warner Brothers, MGM, and Max Fleischer, hold up so well today. They weren't talking down to a juvenile audience.
Say, just a moment. Hold your horses. It's one of them there Bugs Bunny cartoonies are coming on. Just don't tell that there critter's doings.
What's up, Doc?
They were brash, irreverent, and very, very funny.
What a scalawag.
No one's cartoons were funnier, more potent, or less childish than those of Tex Avery, who hailed from Taylor, Texas, and liked the nickname Tex much better than his given name of Fred. Avery is something of a legend in the animation business and is widely considered to be the real creator of Bugs Bunny.
Supervision, Fred Avery.
Though Bugs wasn't very impressed, even in this early starring cartoon.
Tortoise beats hair.
Tortoise beats hair? Why, these screwy guys don't know what they're talking about. What, a big bunch of joints?
Now you ought to know. I work for him.
Tex started out as an animator and bluffed his way into a job as director at the Warner Brothers studio. Before long, he made his reputation by directing cartoons that were faster, crazier, and funnier than anyone else has ever dared to be. At his gag writing sessions, for instance, no one was ever allowed to say, "Oh no," because an idea might be too far out. That's just what Tex was after. And we're going to start our show with one of his masterpieces, a film that starts with a simple premise and gets wilder by the minute. So, ladies and gentlemen, fasten your seatbelts. Here comes King Size Canary. When I was a kid and I first saw some of these cartoons on TV, I didn't understand all the jokes. Didn't bother me. I liked them anyway. Then a funny thing happened. As I got older, year by year, I started to get a lot of the references that had sailed over my head. And to this day, I still find myself unlocking old mysteries about these cartoons. That's because they really mirror the times in which they were made. The guys who created the Warner Brothers cartoons in particular seem to have soaked up the pop culture around them like a sponge. Their cartoons are filled with catchphrases from the top radio shows of the day.
Mother!
Calling all cars. Calling all cars.
Gags based on popular books and magazines.
You are guilty and the sentence is life.
No!
Yes.
No!
Yes.
No!
Yes.
You can't do this to me! I'm a citizen, see?
Cigars, cigarettes, butts.
Oh, hello, Gailey. Why, sure, I'll buy some of your cigarettes. You got a light, kid?
Have you any porterhouse steak?
We certainly have, lady.
And in the wartime shorts, references galore to rationing, hoarding, and other topical concerns.
That'll be $1.19.
Right now, we're going to see a terrific cartoon directed by Bob Clampett, who loved drawing on show business for gag ideas. He made fun of everything from Walt Disney to Citizen Kane in his cartoons. He started at the Warner Brothers studio as an animator when the company first set up shop, and graduated to the director's chair in the late 1930s. Clampett helped develop some of the classic Warner's characters, from Daffy Duck to Tweety Bird.
I thought I saw a putty cat.
But his greatest asset was a zany sense of humor and boundless energy. When he took his credit for this cartoon, Wabbit Twubble, he wrote it out in Elmer Fudd's, Wobbert Clampett. The Clampett cartoon we're about to see was inspired by the incredible success of Chester Gould's Dick Tracy comic strip. And the setup of the story is real. Every day, millions of people waited breathlessly to read the latest installment of Dick Tracy in their daily newspaper. Chester Gould rarely let them down, with his memorable rogues gallery of villains. But the Warner Brothers cartoon crew tried to top him. They did it with a touch of surrealism that's still pretty wild by today's standards. So here, from 1946, is The Great Piggy Bank Robbery. That's the kind of gag that really gets me. Here we are being asked to believe that these animated characters really exist so we can get involved in their story. Then they pull something like that, as if to thumb their nose at the audience and say, yeah, this is just a cartoon. We fooled you. You know, the characters would talk right to the audience. They would make cracks about their bosses at MGM and Warner Brothers, especially Jack Warner, the head of the studio. They'd pull all sorts of stuff to make fun of the very idea of there being in a Hollywood cartoon. Here, see what I mean.
Hey, what's the idea? What's the idea? There's supposed to be a barrel here for me to hide in. It says so right here in the script. Somebody's been laying down on a job. JL will hear of this. That's more like it.
The filmmakers went so far as to integrate their cartoon characters into the world of real-life Hollywood stars.
Cut the gab and bring me an order of fried rabbit.
Oh, I'm very sorry, Mr. Bogart, but we're just fresh out of Wabbit. We got some very nice crepe Suzette.
It doesn't seem so strange that Bugs Bunny and Humphrey Bogart would travel in the same circles. After all, they were two of Warner Brothers' biggest stars. Bugs even campaigned for an Academy Award.
Well, what do you say, folks? Do I get it, or do I get it?
Shall we give it to him, folks?
Yeah! Let's give it to him!
Yes, Bugs and Elmer and Daffy and all the others were movie stars. In fact, their careers have outlasted most of their live-action contemporaries. And here's a cartoon that has fun with that very idea. The Big Snooze. It's wild. Just watch. People tend to think of cartoons as good, clean fun. And most of the time, they are. But as I said before, these particular cartoons mirrored the times in which they were made. And when you look back, you see elements of sex, violence, and ethnic humor you might not have expected. Movies were wide open in the early 30s. Before the censorship of the Hollywood production code set in, you wouldn't have seen a gag like this just a few years later. The censors would have forbidden it. By the 1940s, censorship was a fact of life, even in cartoons.
You might as well move on, Doc. I don't move from here all through the picture.
Another staple of the time was ethnic humor, in live-action films as well as cartoons. Now, it wasn't meant to be malicious. It was an accepted form of comedy back then, to a movie-going audience that was filled with immigrants and first-generation Americans, who were all part of the melting pot.
You go out and pack your clothes, you go get your these and thoses, and away you'll go. Oy, oy, oy.
So it wasn't surprising to see a Jewish caricature, or Chinese, or black in the 1930s.
What up, Honorable Doc?
When America entered World War II, the cartoonists went crazy, making fun of the Japanese and the Germans. No exaggeration was too great, especially when the target was the enemy. Black stereotypes prevailed longer than most others, and some of them are awkward to watch today. But the people who made the hip cartoons even made fun of the stereotypes.
My body might belong to you, but my soul belongs to Warner Brothers.
My hair's coal black, but my name's so white. I wash it all day, and I got the blues in the night.
In 1943, Bob Clampett directed a wild spoof of Walt Disney's first animated feature called Coal Black and the Seven Dwarfs that also took stereotypes to an extreme of absurdity. Yes, attitudes were starting to change in the 40s, and something else was changing too. The war was on. Cartoons were getting bolder, brasher, and sexier. That's right, long before Jessica Rabbit showed her stuff, animators were creating fantasy sex symbols, particularly in the 40s, when pin-ups were all the rage, and wartime audiences were a bit more permissive. Still in all, when Tex Avery came along with a cartoon called Red Hot Riding Hood in 1943, it caused a sensation in more ways than one. But when it came time to release the MGM cartoons to TV, Red Hot Riding Hood was still considered too hot, so it was banned. Therefore, it's my pleasure to introduce the world television premiere of Tex Avery's Red Hot Riding Hood. Well, you can't top that, so we're not even going to try. I hope you've enjoyed the show, and the next time somebody refers to cartoons as kid stuff, I hope you remember what you saw here tonight. I'm Leonard Maltin. So long.
Oh, Wolfie.